Welcome to another episode of the IBC Guys. I'm Dave. Sadly, today Mike was unable to join us, so kind of last minute. But hopefully that doesn't mean you're turning your radio off. Radio, does that make me sound old? Whatever you're listening to the podcast on, or clicking onto the YouTube there and saying the YouTube makes me sound old too. I'm telling you, y'all, it's happening day by day. The kids were teasing me the other day because I said, what did I say? I was taping something with my phone. What does that mean, Dad? Why are you taping something? So what I meant was record, but again, if y'all are as old as me, putting those big old VHS tapes in those recorders, you're taping something. So holy smokes, did I rabbit trail. Mike's not here today to keep me on track. But I do have a topic I want to talk about today. It's really stems from a question that I got in working with somebody. So we'll get into all that. It's related to interest in the loans in terms of the cash value taken out. My hope is it will be applicable and helpful in terms of understanding. We'll get into that here in a second. So the IBC guys exist for three reasons. One is to get knowledge about IBC into people's minds and hopefully their hearts, because once take root in my heart and I want to get this out. That's where the passion lies. I had that discussion. I had a very candid question asked of me. I was working with someone I hadn't met. Why are you doing this, Dave? And really, I think what they were getting at is, why are you, what's in it for you is really kind of the question. Um, and Mike and I get a commission from the insurance company. I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. Um, it is not going to sustain my family. We'll put it that way. Usually policies provide a couple $100 here and there, but that's about it. And we build them to benefit the client. We don't build them to benefit the producer. But I say that because my passion is not the commission, the compensation that exists in doing this. The passion is to genuinely help people. I know that's kind of hard to believe if you have not met me. My hope is if we get a chance to talk, you would see that passion come through in our discussion. I know that's why Mike does it. That's why he answers all my ding dong questions each time I call him about IBC, is because one, he wants to help me understand this better to be able to get it out. But two, he knows ultimately if I understand it as well as I can, it translates into other people understanding it, and hopefully the word can spread. So that's the goal, is to get the content and understanding around IBC out and available. Two is to provide those applicable, implementable examples. So today we're going to talk about something that is certainly a key part to leveraging IBC in your cash flow system. So hopefully you'll find today fits right squarely in number two there. And then third is to get it out to as many people as we can. So if you would share, like, subscribe. I had someone. So again, I think I said on a previous podcast, this is reaching California. So I've had several people from California. Several means three. So I won't over exaggerate. I've had three people. But one of them said that they were talking with their dentist about it, and their dentist had heard about it. So my first question, and maybe you had the same reaction I did, was how did you have a conversation while their fingers were in your mouth? That was my first question. She said she worked around that hurdle, but it was kind of cool to know that the dentist had heard about it, wasn't really there. So we're gonna schedule a call and have a discussion that way. So if you would share it with whomever, sitting at a baseball game, my little boy's starting fall ball here. We got golf and we got dance. That's what season we're in right now. So people sitting around you, any way you can, we'd love to help whomever we can, however we can. So that's why we exist. All right. I got to do this stuff too. So my email is dave@familybankingsolutions.com. Mike's is mike@familybankingsolutions.com. We do have a phone number, 507-205-2284. If you call that number, you'll talk to either Mike or I. We'll pick up and have a conversation with you. So please do so. We'd love to have a chat. Topic today. So let me pose the question that was asked of me in a discussion, and then I'll title the episode, and then we'll jump into it. So the question that was asked of me, it was more of a emphatic question, I would say. So we were having our, I think, third discussion, and the person said, Dave, I looked at the illustration you provided, and you told me there was a 0% loan for borrowing this money. So why are there interest rates on this illustration? So it was almost, so that was their question. It was almost a, hey, Dave, did you lie to me? I need to figure this out. It was kind of the tone I took it. And maybe they didn't intend it that way. Um, but I certainly did not lie. I want to try and clear it up on this, but talk about why I answered the way I did. So I reaffirmed my position. Mathematically, it absolutely is a 0% loan. But to talk through why I answered with that caveat or that qualifier of it being mathematically, and then how does the cash value loan actually leverage itself in terms of being a 0% loan? So that's the goal in talking through that today. So if you have a policy, my guess is you've had a discussion with your agent on this. If you have not or would like to talk more, we'd be happy to do that with you. But my hope is I can clear up some misconceptions here today. So before we jump into answering that implicit question, I want to kind of set the context around this. So when you have a policy, you get to put in really any amount of money that you want. So people often ask, well, how much money do I have to put in? And the answer is anything you want. I've shared many times. I have a guy, $150 a month, just did a policy for $100,000 a year, commercial real estate. Everything in between, any in greater ones, so have bigger ones. So it's really any amount of money that you want, you can put in and leverage the cash flow aspect of these policies. But the reason I bring the amount of money up is the amount of money determines how much cash value you can use. So brass tacks it here, Dave. If you put in $10,000 a year, after like the fourth, fifth year, you have $10,000 to use. When we talk about those first couple years, the first year you can use 60% of your cash value. Second year is 90%. Third year is 98%. Around the fourth year, depending on age, health rating, and your gender, right around the fourth year, you're getting more money in cash value than you are putting in. But let's talk the fourth, fifth year. You put $10,000 in, you can use $10,000 in cash value. So the reason that's important is some people can think, I'll put $10,000 in, but then I'm going to borrow $50,000. So it doesn't necessarily work that way. The amount of money you put in is kind of your ceiling. Each year, that's how much money you can borrow out and go use. And absolutely go use it. The goal, this is not an investment. The goal is not to put your money and have it sit there. In fact, I am not a financial advisor. To be emphatically clear, I'm not licensed. This is not advice, but I would personally never use this as an investment. There are much better returns out there. Specifically, my land business. I would put my money in my land business. The goal of this is a cash flow system. So to put the money in and let it sit there is not what we want to do. We want to leverage it out. But if you put $10,000 in, you get $10,000 to go use each year. And you can put money back in just like a checking account. It decreases what's called a drag on it, but that's your ceiling. That's the amount of money you can take out. So that is important because that limits, if you want to say that, the amount of money again that you can take out, but that then determines how much potentially cash value loan you will have to go leverage. So the more you put in, the more you can leverage and go use. Again, commercial real estate, $100,000. They have $100,000 they can go use. $150 a month, $150 that month, and you can take it out monthly if you choose to. You have $150 to go use, and that particular person's paying their cell phone bills with it. So again, that's important. But what you have then is you have a cash value loan. You are never taking the money out of your policy. So if you put $10,000 in, and I like to use the word ledger because a ledger is an old timey picture of like going to the general store and your ledger is added up. So on your ledger, you have $10,000. And when you put that in there, that never goes away ever. There's not a subtraction sign on that ledger. But when you borrow against the cash value and go use that $10,000 stays in the ledger as $10,000, but they loan you, the insurance company loans their money to you to go use for whatever you want. So the ceiling is the amount of money you put in there. The collateral, say, well, what if I don't pay it back? The collateral is the death benefit that's going to be paid back. Now, Mike says this a little differently. He would argue, maybe argue is a strong word. He would state that the collateral is the cash value that you've put in there. I like to phrase it as the amount of money, let's say $10,000 you put in is the ceiling of the amount that you can borrow. But the reason you can borrow it is because the insurance company knows that any debt that you have, so let's say you borrow 5,000 and you pass away the next day and you owe the insurance company $5,000, that's going to be settled with your death benefit. So the collateral is the death benefit. So Mike and I semantically get differences there, and chances are he's probably correct. I have found that makes more sense to people. The amount of money you put in is the ceiling, the collateral is the death benefit. But when you do that, so when you borrow the insurance's money and take it out, your ledger is still at $10,000. We're using that number. And let's say I borrow $5,000 and I'm going to take my bride on the vacation of a lifetime. Our 20th anniversary, we're going to Tahiti. I don't know if you can go to Tahiti for $5,000, but maybe in this scenario you can. When I do that and I borrow against my cash value, again, against my ceiling, my money stays there. The insurance company gives me money to go use for whatever I want. They don't ask questions. They do charge me an interest rate. So that is important. There is an interest rate tied to that cash value loan. Now that interest rate varies mainly on one thing, is whether you take a variable loan or a fixed loan. So a whole nother episode is determining which one do I choose. I certainly have my personal opinion. We can talk through that in another episode. But a fixed loan is around 4% right now. A variable loan is, my guess is 6.5%. And there are reasons you would do both of them. Listen to this. You may be thinking, why would I take a 6.5% if I have an opportunity to do 4? It has to do with direct and non-direct recognition. But again, that's a whole nother episode. The crux or the point of this discussion here is to say that yes, absolutely, there is an interest rate tied to that cash value loan. So then and there, that sometimes turns people off. And I thinking back in my path in IBC understanding, I can completely empathize with that position. Why would I put money in to borrow it out? Really, the insurance company's money. Why would I borrow that money and then pay interest on it? Well, I made maybe too long-winded of a point to state, and I'm going to go back and say the same thing. Your $10,000 stays on that ledger, making you an internal rate of return as well as dividends and interest. It stays there even though you have taken $5,000 out and gone and used it to go to Tahiti. That concept right there is difficult for people to understand because they're often of the understanding, and rightfully so. If you put 10,000 in and you take 5,000 out, you now only have $5,000 in that account. That is not how this works. You put $10,000 in, and that $10,000 will be there forever, regardless of how many times you've borrowed and used your cash value. Borrowed, paid back, borrowed, paid back. $10,000 stays there forever, making you dividends and interest. So the reason I made the statement to this particular client, it's a 0% loan, because let's say we're at a fixed loan at 4%, my $10,000 is making at least 4%, if not greater, at the same time that it's costing me 4% to leverage the cash value loan that I took out to go to Tahiti or invest it or whatever you want to do with it. It's the same. It's essentially making me money at the same rate my interest is costing me. So if they do that quick math, 4 minus 4 is 0. So it's a 0% interest loan because your money, even though you borrowed $5,000 out, $10,000 is making you 4%, and you're only paying 4% on $5,000 borrowed. So your money is making, your $10,000 is making money faster than any loan you're going to take out. In this case, $5,000. So it is a 0% loan, but you got to remember it's uninterrupted exponential growth of this $10,000. It's going to keep growing at a greater rate than any interest it's going to cost me. So there is an interest tied to these. You do have to pay it back. You can do it through cash value. My family has chosen just to pay the interest back because that money that we're borrowing out to go use in our land business makes us a substantial amount more than it costs us to borrow at 4%. even though it's not 4%. Mathematically, it's 0% because my money is making me money at the same rate, if not a greater rate, than it costs me to leverage that money. And then I'm going to make more money in my land business. So I'm having my money make money, make money. If that makes sense. If you can visualize that in your head, on YouTube here, I don't have any like whiteboard or anything up. Maybe I should have thought through that. But I'm just trying to articulate why mathematically it's a 0% loan. So as you accumulate that $10,000, if you remember, each year that $10,000 goes in, it never comes off. So the second year I have 20,000, the third year I have 30,000, the fourth year I have 40,000, regardless of any amount of money I borrowed against my cash value. Take it in and out. And I think I've shared, I have as much borrowed out of my cash value in my respective policy as I can because all of that money is being leveraged in my land business. I'm making a whole bunch of money in my land business, even though it's costing me, quote unquote, 4%. But again, remember, my $40,000 here is making me just as much money at the same rate it's costing me to borrow that cash value. And then I take that cash value and I go leverage it in my business. So as I pay that interest off, my ledger continues to grow uninterrupted at an exponential rate, while each year I reset my interest rate. It turns it back to zero. So there is no exponential growth. And if you understand math in terms of exponential growth and graphs and things like that, you can probably visualize that in terms of what that looks like. But you give that thing 10 years, my exponential growth is going to hockey stick. It's going to take off like crazy, where my interest just gets reset every year. And again, I'm doing that, paying that interest off because I'm making a whole bunch more money leveraging that cash value loan in my business. So my business easily makes up the difference in interest. So that's how I personally use it. Mike has a whole bunch of stories. Again, Mike's got a whole bunch of businesses and stuff like that. I just have one little guy that we use to support our family and buy and sell on vacant land. But again, going back to the origins of the question or the original question, I thought you told me this was a 0% loan. Why am I seeing an interest rate on my illustration? There is an interest rate, but you got to remember your ledger is making money at the same rate, if not a greater rate, than any cash value loan you take out. So you take your $5,000 out, go to Tahiti, you pay $5,000 back, or $500 back. You're going to pay yourself back into your policy. In 10 months, that thing's settled. You take that $5,000 out and go use it again. All the while, that $10,000 is sitting there. So, second year, you'll be at $20,000 making a dividends and interest and internal rate of return. And then you leverage that cash flow as needed. So, what people need to remember, and it's very hard to understand, is that you are the bank as well. You're leveraging both aspects of the banking system. So you're making money on the money you've put in. When Chase Bank takes my money in, they do stuff with it. I mean, they leverage it to go make more money. That's why they're the behemoth conglomerate they are. They're using it to go make more money. You could do that in this same instance. You're making money on every dime that's put in there. It doesn't come out. And then the insurance company gives you a cash value loan. And you get to go use it for what you want. It does uh, require an interest rate, 4% if fixed. And then again, I don't remember what number I said. I don't remember it. The variable rate obviously is variable. It goes up and down based on the prime rate. But depending on which loan you have chosen, which loan rate, it does cost you, but your ledger is making money at the same rate, if not a greater rate, than any cash value loan you're taking out. So I've said the same thing 4 or 5 times. My hope is saying it different ways, and I didn't vary them a whole bunch, but I tried to at least a little bit. But varying them different ways. My hope is it kind of hit home in one of those capacities or one of those examples. Again, we use it in our land business. We run it through using my to pay my daughter's dance classes. So we pay it out. We pay up front, gives us a little discount. My wife does all that. So let's say it's $3,000. I have no idea if that's how much dance classes cost. We pay the $3,000 out of her policy, and then let's say we pay $300 back a month to our own policy. It costs me $400, or excuse me, 4% on that $300 each month, or that $3,000 I've taken out that I'm paying back at $300 each month. But you got to remember that $3,000 is already on the ledger making me 4%, including, I mean, her policy is greater than $3,000. So all the rest of that is gravy. And I'm just making compounding, uninterrupted exponential growth on that. And again, if you understand math, you can understand the power given time over that, even though I'm leveraging the cash value to go do things I was going to do anyway. So my hope is that helps clear it up. Again, the whole goal is one minute part, and talking about that, the interest rate that exists on a cash value loan. But I do state mathematically it's a 0% loan because your money's making money at the same rate, if not a greater rate, than any cash value loan you would take out anyway. So don't let the numbers scare you on an illustration. Again, I just had that experience with a client. We had to talk through it. It was all good. They went through their policy, and I'm happy for them because now all the money they're running through that policy is going to come back to them over time because they're going to experience that uninterrupted exponential growth, which gets me going, makes me happy. So let's talk about the legacy wealth too with kids. That's what gets me going. I shared that with a client the other day. Holy smokes, when you start doing these things for your kids and understand that your grandkids are going to get the windfall on all this, because if you insure your children, then when they die is when the death benefit kicks out. And if you give that 40 or 50 years to grow, regardless of how much you start with, give that 40 or 50 years to grow, it's going to be a substantial amount of money in terms of death benefit because that continues to grow along with your cash value over the years. And your grandkids are going to have, more money than maybe they should. We'll put it that way. That's my opinion. So hopefully there's some caveats built in with the trust and how they can use that and things like that. But that's for your family to decide. My goal is just to get IBC information out. Is not to give not to give trust recommendations or anything like that. But it does get me excited to talk about the legacy building aspects of using these things. So if you have questions, if I was not clear, why don't you email Mike and tell him, hey, you need to jump back on because this Dave guy has no idea what he's talking about. I do. I'm hoping I'm articulating as well as I can. But feel free to email him, Mike at familybankingsolutions.com. I'm Dave at familybankingsolutions.com. 507-205-2284 if you give us a call. In the show notes are all of our social. We don't check them too often, but I try and get to them at least once a week. So if you want to contact us on there, we got LinkedIn, we got Instagram, I think we got Facebook. I think that's it. I don't know. So I probably should check if I'm checking them each week. I do try and jump into Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I do think we have one more, but if you find that fourth one, maybe try one of the other three if I haven't gotten back with you. But feel free to reach out to us on that. And next week, Mike will be back. We got a good topic lined up. So we'll look forward to catching y'all then. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.